The morning I walked into the Peachtree Defense Consulting Group's Atlanta office and saw my husband's face smiling up at me from another woman's desk, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I asked one question. Who's that? And the answer changed everything. I need you to understand something before I tell you what happened next. I am not a woman who falls apart easily. 23 years in the United States Army, stationed in places where falling apart was a luxury that could get people killed, had done something permanent to me. Not cold, not unfeeling, just organized. When the ground shifts, you survey the damage before you start moving. That instinct saved my life twice overseas. It saved my dignity the morning everything I thought I knew about my marriage turned out to be a carefully constructed lie. My name is Diane Mercer. I'm 44 years old. And this is the story of how I found out that the man I built a life with had built a completely different life without me. The transfer to Atlanta came after 2 years at a posting in Texas. New city, new civilian defense contracting team, new chapter, that's how I chose to think about it. I had learned over the years that optimism is a skill, not a personality trait. You choose it the way you choose your route into unfamiliar territory. Deliberately, and with your eyes open. Marcus had seemed happy about the move. He'd said Atlanta had real opportunity for his consulting work. He'd said he could work remotely until something permanent materialized. He'd kissed me on the forehead the morning I left, and told me he'd be down to join me within a month. That was 6 weeks ago. He still hadn't come. The Peachtree Defense Group occupied 4 floors of a glass building in Midtown. Polished, efficient, the kind of place that smelled like ambition and expensive coffee. My supervisor, a retired brigadier general named Harold Whitmore, walked me through the team on my first morning. Analysts, coordinators, contract specialists, all professional, all welcoming. Then he introduced me to the project integration team I'd be working with most closely. That's when I met Alicia. Alicia Tran was 31, maybe 32. Sharp, quick laughing, the kind of person who makes a room feel lighter just by walking into it. She shook my hand like she meant it. Miss Mercer, I've been looking forward to working with you. I told her to call me Diane. She said only if I called her Alicia. We were already easy together, the way some people are from the first 5 minutes. I sat at the workstation adjacent to hers. I opened my laptop. I reviewed my briefing folders. I was 3 minutes into feeling genuinely optimistic about this chapter when I glanced toward the edge of her desk and my lungs forgot their job. A photograph. Dark wood frame. A man and a woman somewhere, tropical blue water behind them, the kind of turquoise that only exists in certain parts of the Caribbean. The man had one arm around the woman at the edge of the frame. He was laughing. Full face, full smile, the slight cleft in his chin I had kissed 1,000 times. Marcus, my husband. I want to tell you what happened inside me in that moment, because it wasn't what you'd expect. It wasn't grief yet. It wasn't rage. It was something closer to a system error, the way a computer looks when you've asked it to process something it wasn't designed to handle. My thoughts tried to rearrange the image into something that made sense. Maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe it's someone who looks like him. Maybe the photo is old. Maybe. Then I noticed the shirt. Slate, blue linen, short sleeves. I'd bought it for him in Charleston 2 summers ago, on our anniversary trip. I remembered handing it across the counter, telling the saleswoman it was a gift, feeling pleased with myself. I had washed that shirt dozens of times. I knew the slight fray at the collar, the way it draped on his shoulders. He was wearing it in that photograph. I kept my face still. I have no idea how. 23 years of discipline is the only answer I have. I let my eyes drift back to my screen. I typed nothing. I stared at words that didn't register. And then, because I needed to know exactly what I was dealing with, I looked over and said, casually, the way you ask about a houseplant, "Is that a vacation photo?" Alicia looked up from her monitor and her face did something I wasn't prepared for. It opened. Lit. The way a person's face does when they're talking about the thing that makes their life feel worth living. "That's Marcus," she said. "My fiancé." The word landed somewhere between my ribs and my spine. Not boyfriend. Not someone she was seeing. Fiancé. "Oh," I said. My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. "When's the wedding?" She held up her left hand. The diamond was enormous. Elegant. I'm not a jewelry person, but even I could see. It was the kind of ring that costs a man a month's pay at minimum. Except I knew exactly where Marcus's money lived. I knew our joint accounts. our investment portfolio, our savings history. I reviewed them quarterly because Marcus had always said finance wasn't his strong suit and he appreciated me keeping track. 3 months ago, he'd transferred $42,000 from our investment account. He told me it was a speculative real estate opportunity, a limited partnership. He'd said he didn't want me worrying about it. I was staring at the investment. November? Alicia said, smiling at the ring. He planned the whole proposal, rented out this little rooftop spot in Savannah. Candles everywhere. I literally cried. I nodded. I kept nodding. My mouth formed the appropriate sounds. That's beautiful. Congratulations. He sounds wonderful, while somewhere underneath, the ground was cracking open in slow motion. Not all at once. Just spreading. The way ice breaks on a river when spring comes. You can hear it before you can see it. He sounds wonderful. I had said that, about my own husband. I need to pause here, because I want to be honest with you about something. People who hear this story always assume the first feeling was rage. It wasn't. The first feeling, and I'm not proud of how long it lasted, was shame. Not at him. At myself. For not knowing. For trusting. For being so focused on doing my job, serving my country, building my career, that I had apparently left enough space in my marriage for an entirely different woman to walk into. That shame didn't last, but it visited first. And if you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted completely, I think you know exactly what I mean. The day moved around me like a river moves around a stone. Meetings were scheduled, introductions were made. A catered lunch appeared in the conference room. Alicia sat across from me eating a salad and talking about the venue they'd chosen, a converted warehouse in Inman Park, all exposed brick and Edison bulbs. She said Marcus had cried when she tried on her dress. She said it like a gift, like she was sharing the best part of her life with someone she already considered a friend. I hate that I liked her. It would have been easier if she'd been someone I could place neatly in a corner labeled villain. But Alicia had no idea I existed. She was a woman in love, telling her new coworker about her upcoming wedding, completely unaware that the new coworker was the wife of the man she was marrying. On the drive back to my temporary apartment in Buckhead that evening, Marcus called. I answered on the second ring. Hey, sweetheart. How was the first day? That voice, warm, familiar, present. The voice of a man who sounded exactly like a husband who had nothing to hide. It was good, I said. The team seems solid. I knew they would be. You always walk into a room and own it within an hour. He said things like that. Specific, genuine-sounding things. I had never questioned them before. Now I was cataloging them. Was this affection? Or performance? Was he this version of Marcus with her too? Or did she get a different version, softer, more available? The version I only saw on vacations when work wasn't pulling at both of us? Are you coming to Atlanta this weekend? I asked. A pause. Not long. 2 seconds, maybe 3. But I was listening differently now. Things are a little tangled up this week. I've got a strategy session with the Forsyth Group Friday and a client thing Saturday night. Probably next weekend. Okay? Okay, I said. I miss you. I watched the Atlanta skyline appear through my windshield, the lights coming up as the evening thickened. I thought about Alicia holding up her left hand in the morning sunlight. I thought about the slate blue shirt. I miss you too, I said. And I ended the call before I could hear what the lie felt like in my own mouth. That night, I opened every social media platform I could find and searched for Alicia Tran. Her profiles weren't locked. Careful enough to feel private, open enough to be readable if you knew what to look for. The early photos were innocent. Friends, brunch spots, a golden retriever that lived with her sister. Then Marcus began to appear. Not his face at first, just edges of him. A man's hand wrapped around a wine glass. A man's profile in the background of a restaurant shot, blurred but recognizable if you'd memorized a face for 15 years. Then a photo from 18 months ago. A silhouette against a Savannah sunset, a woman's head on a man's shoulder. The caption read, "Found my person." No tag, no name. But the watch on his wrist was the Breitling I'd given him for our 12th anniversary. I kept scrolling. Nashville, Hilton Head, a rooftop bar in Charlotte I'd never heard of. Each image assembled another piece of a life Marcus had built just far enough outside my sight line that I'd never thought to look. He hadn't been careless. He'd been strategic. A face cropped here, a name omitted there, a ring turned toward his palm in the one photo where he was in frame. It was impressive, in the worst possible way. By midnight, I had 47 screenshots saved to an encrypted folder. I had cross-referenced his supposed travel calendar against her posts, and found 17 overlapping trips. I had opened our financial portals and begun building a second document. Dates, amounts, payees. JM Consulting LLC. 4 transfers totaling nearly $28,000 over 14 months, coded as project services. I searched the business registration. Alicia M. Tran, registered agent. A luxury furniture store on Peachtree Road. $14,800. A jeweler in Buckhead. The $42,000 I already knew about. A real estate attorney's trust account in Decatur. 68,000美元. Earnest money. I found the property listing. 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a wraparound porch on a tree-lined street in Decatur. Buyers. Marcus Mercer and Alicia Tran. Marital status. Single. I sat with that word for a long time. Single. 15 years of marriage, 2 cross-country moves, 4 overseas deployments, 1 miscarriage we never fully talked about, 1 promotion ceremony where he stood in the front row with his hand over his heart while I received my rank, and he had written single on a legal document about the house he was buying to build a new life. I called my attorney the next morning from my car in the parking garage. Her name was Patricia Okafor. We'd met during a JAG-adjacent seminar years ago, and I had kept her number in my phone under Pat Real Estate because I never wanted anyone finding it and asking questions I wasn't ready to answer. I called her now. She picked up on the first ring. Diane. Talk. I told her everything. Not emotionally, I didn't have the luxury of emotional yet. Just facts, delivered in order, with specificity. The photograph, the fiancé, the ring, the transfers, the property, the company. When I finished, there was a pause. Do not confront him, she said. I know. I mean it. The moment he senses you know, the money starts moving, messages start disappearing. And suddenly he's the reasonable one and you're the unstable military wife who couldn't handle the long distance. I watched a pigeon land on a concrete barrier across the garage. What do I need? 3 things. Financial dissipation, every dollar he moved from marital accounts without your consent. Documented deception, the timeline, the receipts, the property agreement, and a clear line between his assets and the business he's building with her. She paused. How much does he know you know? Nothing. Keep it that way. How long can you keep it that way? I thought about sitting across from Alicia that morning, listening to her describe their November venue, nodding at the appropriate moments. As long as I need to. Pat exhaled softly. Diane, I've known you for 9 years. I know you're not raging. That's exactly what worries me. Promise me you won't do anything that undermines the case. I'm gathering evidence, not planning a confrontation. Good. But I need you to know something, I said. Whatever happens next, I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in the truth being in the right rooms. There was a pause. Then, that, Pat said, is why you're going to be fine. 4 days passed in the strange, suspended reality of knowing everything and showing nothing. Every morning I drove to Midtown and sat beside Alicia and listened to her talk about her fiancé with the unself-conscious joy of a woman who believed her future was solid ground. She told me Marcus had been through a difficult relationship before her, someone demanding, emotionally unavailable, always prioritizing career over connection. He'd been hurt. I listened to this. I nodded at this. I was the difficult relationship. I want to tell you, if you've ever loved someone who later described you as the problem, you know how that specific sentence lands. It doesn't make you angry first. It makes you audit yourself. You start wondering if they were right, if you were too much, too driven, too absent, too focused on things that didn't make space for softness. And then if you're lucky, if you're paying attention, you catch yourself doing it. And you remember that a man who builds a second life rather than having a hard conversation does not get to rewrite the story of the first one. On Thursday, Alicia arrived carrying a dry cleaning bag and a small bakery box. She dropped both on her desk, opened the bakery box, and slid it toward me. Pecan croissant. You looked like you needed it. Marcus used to bring me pecan pastries after my long field weeks. He knew I came home too tired to pretend I wanted vegetables. I took the croissant. My hands were completely steady. I will never fully explain that to you. Can I ask you something work adjacent? Alicia said. Sure. Do you know anything about defense logistics consulting? Private sector? I looked at her. Some. Why? Marcus is launching a firm. Strategic Advisory for Defense Modernization. He's been building it for almost a year. Client meetings, investor pitches, the whole thing. There's a launch reception next week at the Whitmore Club. The Whitmore Club. One of Atlanta's oldest private social clubs. The kind of place where contracts worth millions were sealed with handshakes and single malt. He needs it to go well, she said softly. I think he's been carrying a lot of pressure. Once this launches, he says, everything settles. Everything becomes real. I turned back to my screen. It sounds like a big night. It is. I'm nervous for him. She paused. I keep telling him everything's going to work out. She meant it. I could hear it, the guileless, genuine love of someone who had no idea the foundation was borrowed money and borrowed time. That afternoon, I called Pat from a conference room with the door closed. Tell me about the firm. Pat had done her research. Mercer Meridian Group. Filed 6 months ago. Initial capital deposit from the joint investment account. I have the routing trail. Alicia Tran listed as Director of Operations with a 20% profit-sharing interest vesting upon marriage. Of course, the property deposit is also traceable to marital funds. The jewelry, the furniture, the travel. I've had a forensic accountant run the full picture. She paused. Diane, we're looking at substantial dissipation. And the Whitmore Club reception next Thursday is his investor showcase. I already knew what I was thinking. Who's on the guest list? I pulled what I could from public filings and LinkedIn. Another pause. General Warren Phillips is listed as a featured guest. Defense industry. Very connected. My chest tightened. I've known Warren Phillips for 12 years. He was at my promotion ceremony. Pat went quiet for a moment. Then, Diane, whatever you're considering, I know. You go as yourself. Documented, organized, clear, not a betrayed wife. A woman with facts. I've never been anything other than that. I arrived at the Whitmore Club at 7:15. The dress was simple, black, tailored, the kind of thing that communicates that you belong wherever you are. I'd worn it to 2 military galas and 1 congressional briefing. My wedding ring was on my finger. Not sentimentally, strategically. I had worn it every day for 15 years. I wasn't removing it for his convenience. The lobby was all dark wood paneling and oil portraits. Atlanta old money. Quiet and certain of itself. Through the open doors of the reception room I could see the crowd. Dark suits, champagne flutes, the murmur of people performing confidence at each other. I gave my name at the door. Diane Mercer. The woman at the registration table looked at her list. Looked up. Something shifted in her expression. Of course, Miss Mercer. General Phillips asked that we let him know when you arrived. I thanked her and walked in. I want to slow this moment down for you, because I want you to feel it the way I felt it. The room was full, maybe 80 people. A presentation screen at the far end. A podium. Promotional materials fanned across tables. Mercer Meridian Group, in clean sans serif font. Marcus's name prominent below the logo. Our name. He had built his escape vehicle and put our name on the hood. I scanned the room and found him in 30 seconds. He was near the bar with a group of 3 men. Posture relaxed. Laughing at something with the ease of a man who believed this night was already his. Alicia stood beside him in a champagne-colored dress, her hand resting in the crook of his elbow. They looked like a couple at the beginning of something. Marcus saw me. I watched it happen frame by frame. First recognition, his eyes finding mine across the room with the automatic pull of 15 years of shared attention. Then disbelief, the micro-freeze where his brain rejected what his eyes were sending. Then calculation, the slight reset of his shoulders. The decision about what to do next. He excused himself from the group, moved toward me. Alicia watched him go with a slight curious tilt of her head. Then she followed his line of sight to me. And her expression did something I hadn't anticipated. She smiled. She thought I was someone he knew professionally. She had no idea. Diane. His voice was low, carefully modulated. The voice of a man managing a situation. What are you doing here? I looked at him. 15 years of mornings. 15 years of believing the person next to me was who I thought he was. I was invited, I said. By whom? Warren Phillips. His jaw shifted. Diane. Marcus. I kept my voice level. Don't. Alicia had made her way over, reading his body language, sensing something she couldn't name yet. She looked between us with a polite question in her eyes. Marcus opened his mouth. I waited. He said, Alicia, this is Diane. We've crossed paths through defense work over the years. Crossed paths. 15 years. Crossed paths. I turned to Alicia. Her face was open, expectant, warm, and I looked at her the way you look at someone before delivering news you wish you didn't have to deliver. I'm his wife, I said. Not loudly, not with trembling, just the sentence, just the truth, placed into the air between us like a stone into still water. Alicia's face, I will remember this for the rest of my life, didn't collapse dramatically. It didn't crumple. It simply lost its architecture. Every assumed certainty that had been holding her expression together seemed to quietly dissolve, and what was left was raw, confused, and completely gutted. What? Marcus reached for her arm. Alicia. She stepped back. One clear, decisive step. Not angry yet, still processing. You told me you were divorced. He didn't answer fast enough. That was all the answer she needed. A voice came from behind me. Deep, unhurried, authoritative. Diane Mercer. I turned. General Warren Phillips stood in his dress uniform, silver at his temples, eyes that had read 1,000 rooms. He extended his hand and I took it. General Phillips, thank you for the invitation. He held my hand a beat longer than protocol required. Then he looked past me at Marcus with the measured expression of a man who was recalibrating. Mr. Mercer, I came tonight because your materials referenced a number of relationships within the defense community. I wanted to understand the foundation. His eyes returned to me briefly. I find myself more curious now than when I walked in. Marcus's composure was cracking at the edges. General, I can explain. Alicia. I turned to her. She was standing very still, her champagne untouched. I want you to know that nothing about this is your fault. You didn't know. I believe that completely. Her eyes filled. She did not let the tears fall. I recognized that the decision not to cry in public, the sheer effort of it. I opened my bag and removed the folder Pat had prepared. Clean, organized, exact. I handed the first page to General Phillips. This is the formation document for Mercer Meridian Group. The initial capital deposit traces to a joint marital account I co-own. The second page is the property purchase agreement for a home in Decatur, listing Marcus's marital status as single. The third is a timeline of transfers from marital accounts to business and personal expenditures over the past 4 years. Phillips read the first page. His face told me nothing, which told me everything. Alicia looked down at the property agreement. Her voice was very quiet. You said the money was from your portfolio. Marcus said, it's complicated. Was she your wife when you proposed to me? Silence. One investor near the podium quietly closed the Mercer Meridian brochure in his hand. A second leaned toward his attorney. The room had not erupted. It had simply withdrawn. The way smart money withdraws from anything that smells like misrepresentation. The event host stepped toward Marcus. Mr. Mercer, perhaps we should reschedule the May. This is a personal matter, Marcus said. No, I said. It became a financial matter when you funded a business with marital assets without disclosure. It became a professional matter when you brought that business into a room where people's trust was the price of entry. Phillips folded the pages and handed them back to me. He looked at Marcus the way senior officers look at subordinates who have made a choice they cannot take back. I'll expect a revised disclosure packet before we have any further conversation. He turned to me. Diane, it's always an honor. He walked away. Alicia removed her ring slowly. Not in fury, in grief. She placed it on the nearest surface, the edge of a cocktail table, and looked at it for a moment like she was saying goodbye to something she'd loved. Then she looked at Marcus. I hope she takes back everything you stole. Her voice did not shake. Her voice was a door closing. She walked out of the ballroom. She did not look back. I watched her go, and I felt not victory, not relief, something quieter and more complicated. The grief of watching someone else's faith in a person break. The specific sorrow of knowing I was the instrument of it even though I had done nothing wrong. If you have ever had to be the truth in a room where someone else's illusion was living, you understand that it does not feel like winning. Marcus found me by the valet stand 20 minutes later. The Richmond air, the Atlanta air was warm and thick with June. He looked older in the outdoor light than he had inside. Diane. Wait. I stopped, turned. He looked at me with an expression I recognized from the early years. Something genuine in it, or something that had learned to perform genuine so well the distinction no longer mattered. We can work through this, he said. If we're honest with each other. I studied him. Once, that sentence would have been a key. It would have opened something in me. Now I heard it for what it was, A man asking for access to the evidence. Marcus, I said. I've been honest. For 15 years. That was my half of the agreement. I picked up my bag from the valet stand. Your half is going to be handled by a judge. The financial restraining order came through 6 weeks later. The property sale collapsed. Mercer Meridian Group never opened, its investors had quietly withdrawn before the paperwork was filed. Marcus's existing contracts came under review. Not because I destroyed him. Because he had attached his reputation to money he couldn't account for. And in the defense contracting world, that is the one thing nobody forgives. Alicia sent me an email 3 months later. 1 paragraph. No excuses. She said she was sorry, and she meant it. And she hoped I was finding my way through. I wrote back 2 words. I know. The divorce took 14 months. Real consequences don't arrive cinematically. They come through filings and depositions and signatures on documents that arrive in unremarkable envelopes. But when it was over, I kept the investment accounts that were rightfully mine, recovered the majority of the diverted assets, and removed my name from every structure Marcus had built with my trust. People ask me if I'm okay. I tell them the truth. I am steadier than I was. Not the same steadier. There is a version of yourself that exists on the other side of being lied to that is harder and quieter and more certain of what it will and will not accept. I live there now. On my last morning in Atlanta before my next assignment, I drove through Midtown as the city was waking up. Joggers on the Beltline, coffee shops opening their doors, the towers catching the first light. I thought about that photograph in the dark wood frame. How one image had cracked open a life I thought I understood. Marcus had spent 4 years building a second life. I spent 4 months proving the first one was mine. Here is what I want to leave you with. Betrayal is not the end of your story. It is a chapter, a brutal, disorienting, world-tilting chapter, but it is not the final page. The instinct to scream, to collapse, to confront everything at once, I understand it. I felt it. But what saved me was the decision to be slower and more thorough than my grief. To be a woman with a folder before I was a woman with an accusation. If you find yourself holding information that someone hoped you'd never have, do not rush. Document. Verify. Find your Patricia Okafor, the person who asks if you're safe before they ask anything else. And then move when you have solid ground beneath you, not when you're still standing in the wreckage. The question I'd leave you sitting with: is there something in your life right now that you've accepted as complicated that might actually just be a lie wearing patient clothes? Now I want to hear from you. Drop a 1 inch the comments if you think I handled this exactly right. Drop a 2 if you think I should have confronted Marcus privately first. Drop a 3 if you would have walked out of that reception the moment you saw him. And tell me, where are you watching from right now? What time is it there? Have you ever had to hold yourself together in public when everything inside you was falling apart? I want to know. Your story might become the next one I tell. If this story stayed with you, if it made you feel something real, please subscribe. Not for numbers, because there are more stories like this one coming. Stories about people who chose quiet strength over loud anger. Stories about what dignity looks like when it's been tested and still remains. I'll be here. I'll keep telling them. This is a fictional story inspired by real emotional experiences, fully rewritten and reimagined in Atlanta to create original content. Any resemblance to real people, events, or organizations is entirely coincidental.